Catus Maximus here again. I know I was gone for a long time, a whole day. I'm doing a review this time of the Tekiro quarter-inch drive hand impact driver. I had previously done a review of this little Harbor Freight hand impact driver, and I really did like it. Because they're handy little tools. They take 6mm or quarter-inch hex bits, and they are an impact driver and can be used as a screwdriver as soon as you get the screw loose. These are just like impact wrenches, electric or air, although they have they work obviously slower, but they have a distinct advantage over other types of powered impacts is the fact that you're hitting them with a hammer, and that provides a huge amount of downward force. So they work really well, especially on like Phillips bits and that kind of thing. And those are used often, say on Honda brake rotors, and most motorcycles will have some type of Phillips bits that are going to be real stuck. And these are the kind of tools that you want to use. Many people are familiar with more of the hand impact drivers that are related for driving sockets, like this snap-on here. And then they'll have adapters where you can run quarter-inch bits or 5/16 bits. Many of them actually come with larger hex shanks for extra heavy duty. But it's exactly the same thing. You know, this is just one that drives a socket. And then these are smaller ones that are for driving screws. They're not quite as heavy and they're more convenient. So here's the Tekiro. Let's give you a close look at that. Let's get that bit out of there. This is actually made pretty nicely. And what I should say is I'm reviewing it as a Tekiro. Oh, and it does have the JIS symbol, Japanese Industrial Standard. I have I believe, one of my viewers has mentioned that several times in the comments on my videos. And so when I saw this had JIS, I thought he might be kind of excited about that. I don't know exactly how much it applies to this or tolerances on the actual tools. I believe it's more so for the bits. And these are the little bits that it came with. And I thought that was kind of neat because it came with these screw extractors that are quarter-inch hex. I've never seen those before. And they came with the impact driver, so I assume they're impact rated. And I thought that was pretty cool. It was a little tool that I didn't have. I mean, I did have one of these. This is a much nicer unit, but I certainly didn't have quarter-inch hex screw extractors, so that was a nice little upgrade. And it comes with a number 1, a number 2, and a, what does it look like, 5mm wide slot head bit. So Harbor Freight, I had picked this up, and then they decided to stop selling them, and I had some people, were displeased with that because these are neat little tools. And so this, I found, this Tekiro is actually quite a bit nicer of a unit than the Harbor Freight. And what was really surprising is was in a performance tool package. But performance tools now get basically totally given up. And they aren't even paying to have the products rebranded Performance Tool. They're just going to sell other people's products and put it in Performance Tool packaging. So this was the packaging it came with, and part number W2503. That's how you can find this kind of tool today. And it was on the shelf at O'Reilly's, so pretty cool. And I think it was about 15 bucks or something like that. It was really reasonably priced, and was really surprised to see that. And they do a lifetime warranty on it, and they just call it the Impact Driver Mini. What is kind of handy is that they do have a little chart for using those spiral extractors, which is real handy because if you don't get the right size drill bit, spiral extractors don't work super well. And then a little bit of advertising on the back of the packaging there. So if we go back to our close-up look, we'll just compare them. The Harbor Freight, is pretty good, but the Tekiro has a nice satin chrome finish, and the chrome plating definitely seems thicker and more solid. This type of super shiny chrome plating here on this Harbor Freight always seems to end up being on tools where the chrome plating isn't bonded very well and will end up flaking. Although I haven't had that issue with this Harbor Freight, I haven't used it very much. But we can see that the designs are similar, but the Tekiro is just a little bit longer, is very slightly larger in diameter, and it just seems that it is definitely a little bit heavier duty. Both the Harbor Freight and the Tekiro have really nice deep knurling, and I think you can see that here where it's just nice little pyramids. Whenever you look at knurling, it's usually screwed up or not deep enough, and even on this Harbor Freight, they both came out pretty nice. Now, in my previous review of this Harbor Freight unit, I did take it apart to show how it works, but there's basically a V-groove, and then there's a pin attached to this. So what happens is when you hammer it, this piston or the body moves downward, and when it moves downward, it hits against this V-groove, against the pin, and when that acts like a ramp, that's the word I'm looking for. I'm always losing my words. So, and it presses against the ramp, and so since you're holding onto the body, it forces the little tip to rotate around. And then that is exactly the same way it works on any large one, although this Snap-on has an insane spring in it. Now, one property of a quality hand impact driver is that there isn't a lot of play when it's in the natural resting position or the fully extended position. If you run into these types of tools, whether it's for sockets or even these little ones, and this anvils, can be rotated back and forth, and there's a bit of play before it seems to engage the ramp, those are much more difficult to use, and I would recommend not getting one that does that. Like this Tekiro here, this is really tight. When it's in an extended position, we can see that there's almost no play at all. And even compared to the Harbor Freight actually has very little play as well. And that's one of the reasons I did like it, is it did have a proper design where there wasn't a lot of backlash. The problem with the backlash is when you're using these, it's much more difficult to focus on keeping it straight, hitting the back of it with a hammer, and then making sure to apply pre-tension because you have a poor quality unit and you have to overcome that play. You want ones like this, so you just put it on the fastener, you hit it, and that thing just wants to rotate. And it's a little easier with the tip. Reversing direction on good quality ones, some you really have to push in and rotate around. On a good quality unit, if you want, it's a kind of a natural operation. If I want to unscrew something, I'm going to put it in the screw, and then I'm going to give it a turn in the direction of unscrewing. So we had it in the forward or clockwise direction. We turn it counterclockwise, and that makes sure that the driver is in the appropriate direction. So we press in on it. The anvil will move counterclockwise, and you just hold it, make sure it's straight, and just give it a good few beats. And voila, screws that are even quite stubborn will become loose. I mean, it's really, really surprising. These things are super expensive or super effective. If you have screws that you're worried about or that you have experience with, such as the Phillips head screws that hold on brake rotors, you just immediately grab one of these, put it in there, and just give it a good couple solid whacks, and that's all it takes to break the screw, break the initial, corrosion and seizing. And then you can go and use a regular screwdriver. Still might be a little tight, but you'll be able to unscrew it, or of course just use this by itself once you break the screw. Then this becomes a really nice solid steel heavy screwdriver. This little undercut on the end indicates the intended use and the intended lifespan of the tool, and that's actually a really telling aspect. What they're expecting is that you would use this tool to the point, and that it should last to the point that you've used this daily for years. And just like a chisel, this metal will, it's hardened steel, but then they anneal it to be a little bit softer so that flakes won't chip off and hit you in the face. So it is soft, and eventually, just like the back of a chisel, this will start to mushroom out and will have a little flange. Well, it's undercut so that doesn't actually start going past the natural body of the tool, and it's less irritating to use. We're on the Harbor Freight, they didn't have that. So as this starts to mushroom out, there'll be these kind of sharp pieces of metal rolled over, and you'll have to use a file on them. And I really did appreciate that small attention to detail. Also, the V-grooves, and I'm not going to take this one apart because this clip that they put on is extremely strong. It is a very difficult clip to work with, so I am going to just leave it on there. But it is much wider, indicating that there is much larger V-grooves, which there indeed are on this tool, versus the Harbor Freight. I'd have to say the whole meat of the cam mechanism has about 30% more material in it. I also like the fact is where Harbor Freight uses these little spring clips and then a ring to retain the cross pin. I like that this didn't actually have that collar because these things are going to be dropped and dinged up, and this collar is just going to get all bent and warped and have issues, even though, some people may like it, and I'll have to admit that too, is because it does rotate and it's kind of a nice place for your fingers to stop. So I guess that's, personal preference, but I do like the smooth look of this and just having, no kind of protrusions on it. And so these things are excellent. If you have something like my luggage lock here. No, I'm just kidding. This isn't a luggage lock. This wouldn't fit on anybody's luggage. These types of tools, these types of locks, especially these nice Abises. If you guys ever, want to get just a lock brand, get an Abis. But a quick warning, they're kind of known as locksmith locks. Most nice Abis locks don't come with keys. They come with basically the bare lock with the core, and you have to get a key made at a locksmith, so they end up costing you nearly the same amount to get a working lock as just buying a thing at a locksmith shop. And most locksmiths will end up selling Abises, and you can get them to take your house key. They have like 20 different cores, and like this one's for a 6-pin Schlage. This is not my house key. I'm not going to show it on my video. And it's not a Schlage C core, but they're really heavy duty. I'll end up doing a review, all sorts of anti-drill pin, everything. These are not a master lock. That's all I can really say. One of the nice aspects inside these is they do, the core is easily replaceable, and they have a lock screw, but it is countersunk. So it's actually the head of the screw is below the surface of the steel. So, you have to drill through the whole lock body. But they are notorious for getting severely stuck when they're corroded. I bought a couple of old rusty ones of these. And ended up having to drill out the darn screw. Wishing I had one of these drivers, because this is just a perfect example of where you would use one of these. Is you just put that down in there, make sure that we have it in the unscrew position, and I could just feel it rotate. One strike, and there's our screw. So that's just how well these things really work. They can just be amazing, to be quite frank. And the way the screw got stuck on the tip is really telltale. I mean, it is driving that screwdriver bit into the screw, as well as turning it. Anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and end this review here for the Performance Tool W2503, which is a repackaged Tekiro. And you can look online, and then you can find much nicer sets. Tekiro has much nicer models. I actually couldn't find this model, so this may be like a maybe I didn't look hard enough, but this may be kind of a special unit that is known as OEM, so they make it just for mass production. But it wouldn't make sense because it would say Performance Tool on it. It's laser etched. Instead it's a Tekiro. And then they do openly advertise the JIS right there. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching and subscribing and seeing the review of this Tekiro hand impact driver. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to the Catus Maximus channel. Until next video, Catus Maximus out.